child protective services, and they won't give them back to their loving families because they're making money.
This is a legal system that you're going into. And if you don't know the rules, you will be chewed up and spit out.
If I could say anything to a mother who just got their children detained, you're in a crisis. Yeah. Life feels like it's over. The most important thing is regaining custody of your children.
The child welfare system at its core is designed to protect children who need protection, okay? And that's key, is who need protection.
So social workers, out of fear, will remove more children rather than only remove those children that truly need to be removed.
It's okay. It's okay.
This isn't someone stole your car. Someone broke into your house. This is someone took your child, your flesh and blood.
It doesn't say on this order that it was not proven. It says untrue. True. I immediately knew that, okay, well, this ain't over.
Were there signs there? Were there no signs? Did I miss them? Did I catch them? At this point, I honestly don't know.
Families only get a finite amount of time to reunify.
I came into this field to help families, not destroy them.
The difference between the criminal system and the child welfare system is substantial. You have more rights as a criminal than you do as a parent.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to CPS Current Events. I'm your host, Amanda Cisco, and I'm here today with our guest, Brittany. How are you today, Brittany?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. So, Brittany, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Brittany. I live in Hampton, Virginia. And in December, a CPS case was opened up against me. And during that month, my children were taken.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Did they say what the reason was?
Originally I was told it was for breaking a safety plan. Then I was told it was for breaking a protection order. Then I was told that it was for the accusal of drugs and domestic violence in the house. And I guess in court it was labeled as failure to protect.
Now, were these things true?
No. And I mean, I actually have like photo after photo from other people and statements and different things that really prove everything isn't true.
So tell me a little bit about how this case started.
Well, originally about 8 years ago, I had an original case that was called here in Hampton. And, I ended up moving to Maryland and having my son. It was my son's paternal grandmother that had made the calls. Everything was unfounded. Case was closed. The case here was closed like almost immediately when I moved. And then the case up there was unfounded and closed within a month. Basically, me and my daughter's dad got into an argument, and the same woman saw a weak spot and used it as a way to take custody of my children. I was falsely accused of being on drugs. I've never had a substance abuse problem. It was originally accused that like my son had a black eye. You clearly see he didn't. I have pictures of my kids. I have pictures of my kids for almost every day of their life. Supposedly I was covered in bruises. I was never covered in bruises. I really didn't think anything of it. And I guess my biggest mistake was that I signed a safety plan, not understanding what really they implemented with that. And once they said I broke the safety plan, I was deemed failing to protect.
Now, when did this case start?
They originally contacted me on December 7th, 2021. That was the first and very time I got a phone call, and I met the CPS worker at my home for about maybe 25 minutes.
And what came about that?
That was when she had me sign the safety plan, basically stating that my daughter's dad wouldn't be around. She, I explained to her that I knew where these calls were coming from and what they were about, that I had been through this before. She could clearly see my children didn't have marks on them. She could clearly see I wasn't covered in bruises. I offered drug testing on the spot. I was told that I was going to sign the safety plan and that she was going to contact him the next day to try to clear up what was seeming like a bad custody matter. And I never heard from her again until the day she took my children.
And they said the reason, but you said in court, they said the reason they took your children was
failure to protect.
Failure to protect.
Yes.
Do you remember the terms of the safety plan that they gave you? Hi, Tracy. Hi, Carmen.
The only thing that the safety plan said was that allegations of abuse and neglect. And it stated, because I admitted when I offered to take the drug test that the only thing I would fail for was THC. So it said on the safety plan that I was to remain sober while being a caregiver and that Brandon was not to be allowed around my children. It said nothing more than that.
So how did you break the safety plan?
On December 16th, I decided to take the kids over to his residence with a Christmas tree and decorations. And we were over there decorating a Christmas tree. And a second CPS call came in stating that there were drugs and guns laying around the house, that Brandon had threatened to kill my son, that I was locking my kids in a car all day, and that we were squatting in a place that we weren't supposed to be at.
So you were accused of squatting?
Yes.
Now, for those of you who don't know what squatting is, I'm a realtor, so I'm familiar with this term. Squatting is when you go into a property that is vacant and you basically, like, there are different ways of doing it. Some people start paying the property taxes and then claim they have rights over the home. Some people just kind of like literally squat there, and then you have to go through the legal process of eviction. So you weren't squatting anywhere.
No. Now,
where do you think they got that from?
The circumstance with that is I have my own residence, and Brandon, my daughter's father, he lived with his grandmother. His grandmother passed away over the summer, and there's been some issues between him and his mother over the house. So he's kind of been trying to, battle out the court thing, because he wants to be able to own that house. Everybody in his family knows that he's there. His residence has been listed there for 20 something years. All of his mails, his IDs, everything state that house, but that actually though was the final thing that told me exactly who made the reports, because earlier in the year, she had offered a real estate agency up to me that might be able to help Brandon get the house. And when she did that, she said, well, you could always look into squatting rights if he's lived there for that long, and was the only person that had ever mentioned that. The CPS worker shows up with 2 cops, and it's me, him, the children, and another adult. She talks to us for a good 20 minutes, sees that we're decorating a tree, sees there's obviously not drugs and guns lying around. My kids had just finished eating. She asked us to sign a safety plan stating that if we owned guns, they would be locked up according to law, and kept where they needed to be. Apologized for bothering us and left.
I'm sorry to hear that, Veronica. Reach out to my email that's listed and I'll do an interview with you. Thank you, Douglas. Douglas says, don't give up on yourself.
Thank you.
So what was the event that kind of put all of this into motion? Was there a particular event, or did this come out of nowhere? Yeah. Try to start from the beginning and walk us through your story.
The last 4 years of my life, like on an emotional level, have been, pretty hard. My grandmother that was very important to me passed away.
I'm sorry.
I had an affair in a marriage that I had been in for about 6 years. I had to face up and own up to that. My daughter actually was a result of that affair. That was a big, it's hard when you have to face the things that you've done wrong and own up to the faults and truth. I mean, no matter what it is.
That's very big of you to admit that. And it happens. It happens. So, don't beat yourself up too much.
I went through all of that. My daughter literally came home from the hospital 2 days before the state went into lockdown for COVID.
Oh, goodness.
So between an ending marriage, a new baby, an earlier death in the family, a new relationship that was learning like to mesh with each other. You know, I finally just got overwhelmed, and a small argument, I escalated into being something bigger than what it was.
Okay. So CPS got involved based on domestic violence, or?
Yeah, there was an incident that he was trying to leave, and I stood in front of his driveway and basically refused to let him leave. You know, he kept trying to inch towards, like, really, really slow, like, you know, you need to move. It was all on video. It was shown to a cop. When the cop, you know, I was upset, called the cops. The cop basically looked me in my face and told me, ma'am, you were standing in the driveway, you know, like, and he didn't even, we're looking at it. He didn't even really hit you, you know. I accused him of all kinds of things, being upset like people sometimes do when you're in a relationship and things are heated. At that time, because of all of the things that I was saying, police officers, my daughter's father, searched my daughter's father's truck, searched his house, then followed me over to my house and searched my home. Obviously, they saw that nothing that I was claiming was true. I was told that I could take out a protective order if I felt the need to, like a temporary one. And so that's what I did, you know, in the heat of the moment, thinking, well, if I go and I take this out, that's, you know, kind of we have no choice but to let things cool down, not talk to each other, not make things worse. You know, I was really, really, really overwhelmed at that time. And, you know, I even admitted to that. I admitted that, you know, I had been trying to get help for it. I have records, you know, that I sought out help after the birth of my daughter through my OBGYN. That wasn't working. I tried another therapist, like looking for different meds. That wasn't working. I've recently started with another therapist and new medication, which has, you know, been helping because it's focusing more on symptoms and not what everybody else was focusing on. And I was basically called a liar that I was protecting my abuser, even though I have witnesses that'll say he never raised a hand to me. He kept his cool, and I was upset.
So how long has this been going on for? When did this case begin?
It started that first contact on December 7th, 2021. And then they were removed on December 17th, 2021.
Okay. So this was literally in the middle of, well, it wasn't in the middle of lockdown, was it?
No, this is just
lockdown happened 20.
Yeah.
Gosh, the years are blending by already. My goodness.
Just the month before last. I'm basically 65 days in since they removed my children.
Oh my goodness. That's really cool that you count the days though.
Yeah, other than like a very random day here or there, and I think 2 days that my son had stayed away, I had never been away from my children. Freya I had never been away from for a night. One night up until this, and then I've had one visit with them, and like one physical visit with them, and now I'm afraid to, because apparently not wanting to talk and communicate with the person that took your children makes you hostile and need to do soul searching.
Right. Do you know what process in the case you're in right now? What stage?
I have not even a single clue. We did a family engagement meeting. I was put through hair tests. My hair test showed I told the truth. I went and retained a lawyer because I was worried about what was happening and going on. I was really starting to feel like they were trying to keep my children from me. And the lawyer tried to dissolve what they called respite that they had put my children in. And when that occurred, they moved for an emergency removal order. We had court 5 days later, where I was originally told to expect a 30-day continuance, but instead, everybody ended up testifying. At the end of the testimony and all that stuff, I was under the understanding that the paternal grandmother was basically retaining like physical custody of my children, but like they still, you know, social services or whoever was still going to have like the say so of what was going on. Like it was kind of like, I guess, like a kinship type care or something along those lines. I started getting frustrated, you know, after the one visit and not having any more contact or knowing what was going on. And I sent an email, demanding for my rights to be able to visit and to know what my case plan was and what I needed to do. And I was sent back an email stating that legal custody was transferred to the paternal grandmother on the date of the emergency removal order. But that's the court date that I wasn't even allowed to speak at. So how did somebody get legal custody and now they don't have to give me a plan to get my kids back or services or anything like that if she's got custody and she's not even related to my daughter?
That is quite disturbing. That is very disturbing. I hired a private lawyer who told me at one point in the past during a court date that I was not to speak. And when you hire an attorney, you do give them the right to represent your best interests. And they can say, look, I don't want you to talk. But if you didn't have an attorney representing you at that time, it doesn't make sense to me that you wouldn't be allowed to speak at your own trial. You're a party to the case. That's a violation of your due process rights.
That emergency removal order, they don't even normally allow you to be at. But because I had hired an attorney,
which is another violation of due process, you have the right to be at every single hearing.
But because I hired an attorney, they informed the attorney of the emergency removal order. So we showed up anyway, and they just didn't allow us to speak. They handed the judge a 6-page emergency removal request. The information on there is wrong. My children aren't even listed as the correct race. My son's age is not even listed correctly. Most of it is fabricated hearsay. But again, I mean, how can legal custody be transferred to somebody when I haven't even been able to defend myself?
That is very disturbing, but unfortunately, it seems to be the status quo with these agencies and how they operate.
And then last week, I got mediation papers sent to an address that I don't even live at.
How did that happen?
It's the address of my daughter's father, but everybody knows that my address through the Department of Social Services, through the courts, my ID, DMV. Everything that I've ever had in my name, that's in my name, all of my mail comes to my home address. I have never received mail at the address over there. But somehow or another, there's custody and visitation forms filed on both my son and daughter by my son's biological father, who's not even related to my daughter, and they're sent over to that address.
Do you know who the petitioner was? The person who filed those papers?
It says that it's my son's biological father.
Okay. So here, I'm going to try to find something.
And they're dated the day before the emergency removal order.
Are you guys on good terms right now?
No, he walked out of my son's life when my son was about 8 or 9 months old and never had contact with him again up until this started.
Do you think that it's a possibility that when he filed these papers, when he filed these petitions, did he intentionally, did he intentionally list your address as wrong, or do you think it was the court who did that?
I would imagine that it would have to be him because I've never had a court paper. I've never had anything from court come to that address over there in my name. I've never had a piece of mail over there in my name ever. It's not ever been my actual address.
That might be something that you can pursue.
And the only person that he would be able to get information from would be the paternal grandmother. And she 100% for sure knows my address as she lives 5 blocks away from me.
Interesting. If I were you, I would look into that matter a little bit.
Okay.
So what was the last court date that you had? Tell me about that.
The last court date that I had, I believe, was on January 11th. That was the one that the lawyer had originally told me. She said that that anyone in the courtroom could ask for a 30-day continuance, and more than likely they would, so be prepared. And instead, they brought the CPS worker and my son's paternal grandmother, and they both basically testified against me. I testified on my own behalf, and the guardian ad litem said that they had spoken to my son, and my son said that he wanted to come home. And basically, my lawyer tried to demand the return of my kids, and the judge pretty much called me a liar, said that he didn't believe what I said. And my daughter's father's lawyer seemed to kind of throw him under the bus in his absence to use against me getting my kids back.
I'm sorry to hear that. That is really unfortunate.
Yeah, my daughter's father has a criminal background record, and she stood up in court and said that I knew that he had a record, which showed poor judgment on my part, and that she believed that I would always choose him over my kids. I thought that lawyers were supposed to like defend you in court, not make you look bad.
They absolutely are supposed to defend you. So if I hear you correctly, you're saying that his lawyer in his absence,
yes,
was saying not good things about him.
Yeah, that I knew, basically bringing up his record, that I knew he had a criminal record.
His lawyer.
Yeah.
Do you know if this was a court-appointed attorney or a private one?
Well, that's what's interesting, is because she's his court-appointed attorney in this case, but 3 years ago she was his hired defense attorney.
Okay. So you don't know if you're in, like the adjudication phase of the hearing or the disposition.
I walked out of
hearing.
I walked out of court with a little card that said for me to come back to court on the date that I go back at 2:30 p.m. and that's all I know. I didn't even know that supposedly this woman had custody of my children already until I asked what the reunification plan was and what services were going to be offered, and was told that none had to be.
And you don't know why they said that. That's really interesting.
No, because again, I can't understand how they could transfer legal custody with a hearing that I couldn't even speak at. Like, I could understand if she was like granted guardianship, or, it was like temporary placement, reunification. I would completely understand that. That would make a lot of sense if she's the one that's physically taking care of my children. But they've gone as far as, I got an email the other day where the teacher removed me as the guardian from my son's school. I have not lost my parental rights.
No, and you still have full legal and educational rights, even if you don't have legal custody.
But see, that was another thing that was used against me, is because I was homeschooling. See, my son has apraxia of the speech. We went through a long, extensive thing with CHKD. We were recommended a public school. This was before COVID. I took him out of homeschooling and put him in this public school for this, speech doctor that was over there. But this year, I don't know if it's staffing issues, if it's what. Almost every parent I know that has a child in this school system with an IEP or a 504 plan, we've gotten letters stating that they can't accommodate the full needs, that our children need, but, they can offer things that'll help substitute. Well, I'm sorry, but my son's speech needs a lot more concentration than small substitutions. So I felt like it was better, especially with everything still going on with COVID. He was coming home getting sick again. It was just better to have him at home and working one-on-one with him than him at school delaying more the help that he needs.
Understandable. And they try to use that against you?
Yeah, during the family engagement meeting, it was said that my children needed to be in public school, that I was supposedly homeschooling.
I homeschooled my son, like the year before COVID hit. His grades skyrocketed. I mean, I had him computer coding off of a course that I paid for.
And my son is brilliant.
And he has emotional issues, so and it really helped to have that stability for them. And furthermore, it is our right as parents. It is our right as parents to decide what is best for our child, not the government. The government. See, this is when things go haywire, is when the government interferes too much in people's personal lives. That is the reason for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and many other laws that we have in this country that is supposed to be free. This is disgusting. It's disgusting to me that they are ripping apart families over fucking trivial shit. Trivial shit. It's asinine. It's obscene. It's disgusting.
And it's crazy how many things go along with it, because, for instance, you know, I voluntarily did the hair and urine screen that they asked for the drug testing, you know, but then my kids were basically held at me like I couldn't really be around my kids until these results come back. So I start carting the doctor's office, and I am literally told, the caseworker said, if you want your results, you need to call her. We're not going to give them to you. You know, the lawyer tells me give them one.
Do that. They can't do that, but they do it all the time. They are not supposed to do that.
And it took the lawyer sending a letter over demanding my results. And within 5 minutes, I had the results in my email. But my biggest question there is why is a doctor's office willing to do that to begin with? And if I'm getting the same results from them that I'm going to get from her, why can't I get them from both people?
It's because they're in bed with CPS, who is in bed with the federal government that is putting government sanctions out to kidnap our fucking children.
Yeah,
they're all in bed with each other. Even some of these lawyers that are court appointed, even some of the private attorneys, they're all in the same team, just different pieces on the board, but they all play for the same team.
Yeah,
and we're the odd one out. When we walk into that courtroom, we're the ones who are fucked. The joke's on us.
Yeah, it's really like walking into a I've never seen a courtroom that didn't have due process the way family.
It's so much worse than a circus. See, circus has games, right? Games, you know, you're fine. When you're done, you can walk away. This is warfare. We are under siege. This is life or death.
You know,
for a lot of us and our kids.
Throughout all of this, you know, I've known people that I've seen go through, you know, some tough situations with CPS. You know, and I really felt like they did wrong in their situation, but I thought it was kind of like a, you know, a here and a there kind of thing. After the things I've learned since my children have been taken, you know, I actually feel like a horrible human being that I ever believed that stigma that CPS was good, and that everybody that CPS's life walked into deserved, you know, the outcomes that were coming, because I could never believe that. Like, after the things I've learned, the people I've met, the stories I read, and the situation I'm dealing with myself, I mean, the worst part of it is I can't make it make sense. And since I can't make it make sense, I can't.
Bingo. You can't make it make sense. You will literally drive yourself mad trying to figure out all the whys, you know, and unfortunately, so many of us as parents don't realize, and just including the rest of society, we don't realize what is really going on here until we have to go through it ourselves. And it's so uncomfortable for so many people to talk about. You know, you lose them. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to know, because it is a reality shattering truth.
Nobody prepares you for how hard it is to go out and see people again, feeling like you're carrying that stigma of, you know, that you've lost your kids. You know, they don't prepare you for the pain and the hurt that comes with it. I've struggled to walk into a grocery store because, you know, I've been a mother for 17 years. My oldest daughter is 17. You know, this is the first time in my life I've had a Christmas without my kids. I've had this extensive time without my kids. It's like everywhere I go, you know, they would be there. But they're not now. They don't prepare you for that while they're out there saying that they help people, but they're really not. And it's sad that we live in a world that, you know, and I'm not saying anything bad in any way, but I feel like if I was on the drugs they were accusing me of, and I feel like if I was being beat on like they were accusing me of, I would already have my kids back. But because, you know, I didn't lie and I told the truth, and, you know, I was actually big enough to admit where my faults were and what happened, I'm punished for being honest and telling the truth about what actually happened and what I really needed.
I can't ethically on my conscience advise people to lie. But when I first started my case, I truly believed that the truth will set you free. I can tell you from my personal experience that that's not the case. Anything that you say can and will be used against you by these people. Can and will. Emphasis on will. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's just, you know, that's the hard truth.
Yeah, well, you know, it was blindsiding, you know, because like I mentioned, you know, 8 years ago.
Yes, Shy, I agree.
the same woman had called on me. And at that time, 8 years ago, a woman from CPS walked into my life who was, I mean, she was literally like an angel. She did her job the way her job was supposed to do. If there was resources out there that could help a family stay together, she was working to keep them together. You know, she, and it caught me off guard, you know, walking into a completely different tone, but that's not right. That's people of that job nature are supposed to be keeping families together. That's what their job is. So why do they make more money and keep it tearing people apart?
You just said it right there. They make more money tearing families apart. When they put your son in respite care and he didn't need it, they knew he didn't need it. They put your son in respite care 100% and only for that fat government check.
Yeah, and they moved him 3 times. The first time was because the family couldn't understand the my son's speech issues. The second time was because my son snuck a video call to me, and when they saw that he was on the video call, they took the phone from him. He hasn't had his phone since. You know, we were finally allowed one video chat. At first it was a 7-minute video chat. And then I got that one visit with him. And other than that, I mean, he was moved 3 times. Him and my daughter were moved 3 times in 21 days.
Did they tell you why?
Like I said, the first time it was a slip up. We weren't even supposed to be told that they were moved. Somebody slipped up and said something during the family engagement meeting. And then they finally admitted that it was because the provider couldn't understand his speech. And then, like I said, the second time they were moved, it was because he video called me and got in trouble for it.
That is fucked.
It is. You know, like I went from a person that was with my kids pretty much 24/7 to, you know, I don't know if you can see it or not, but those stuffed animals and stuff are what I pretty much have left. This pillow I got when Tylee was born. They give it out at the hospital for NICU babies. And this was Freya's bear and the last shirt she was wearing the day before they took her.
I'm so sorry, Brittany. I know exactly how painful this is.
And I don't understand it because, you know, I'm somebody that actually wants my kids. I have a home. My kids each have their own room. You know, like my kids, the day they took my children, the CPS worker even said herself that it was obvious that my children were well loved. And I looked over at the officer and I said, would you imagine that? My children are well clothed, well fed. There's not a mark on them. And she just said they're obviously well loved. So what the fuck is going on here? And nobody would answer me. As she sat in my driveway laughing and joking with the police officers about her upcoming Florida vacation, while I frantically find somebody to take my kids. So
I don't understand how these people are just so nonchalant about how they are destroying people's lives, not just parents, but children. If they think for a second this isn't going to affect them in the future in serious ways, they're ridiculous.
I have a picture for almost every day of my daughter's life. And then I have a picture that I took from that video call that my son snuck. And you can visibly see, you know, it's a picture I don't forget because it's the saddest I've ever seen my daughter. You know, the video chat that they allowed me, my son kept telling me that he had a headache. And I kept asking him, well, you know, or have you been, you know, telling the provider? And he's just kind of giving me that look like, Mom, I'm trying, but they don't understand.
I'm so sorry. So do you have a return to court date?
I know I go to court next Monday, but I don't even know what's supposed to happen at the court. You know, I'm not exactly like the most financially well-off person. So my retainer has already pretty much been ate up by the lawyer. I don't even know what's happening with that. I don't know if I'm still represented because of that or not. I really have no idea. I took it upon myself because I didn't know what else to do, but I wrote an affidavit of facts. I've got 10 pages of facts and 47 pieces of attachments to back those facts up.
Great. So you wrote a declaration of facts.
Yeah.
Okay. You need to be able to get that on the record.
Yeah.
Now, full disclosure, I say this every show. I'm not a licensed attorney. I do start law school next fall, but anything that I say is only from my own experience. I do not give legal advice. Do not take any legal advice from me. I am simply providing legal education, which everybody in this country does have the right to. So just wanted to say that. A way, and some lawyers will agree, some will disagree on this, a way that you can get evidence onto the record is to file everything. So everything that you type up, everything that you want to present in court, you must serve a copy to each party on the case. Every party listed on the case, you must provide a copy. That declaration of facts, got to provide a copy. Any evidence you want to put on, got to provide a copy. And you also have to file a copy with the clerk along with a certificate of service saying on this blank day of blank, whatever year, a copy of the foregoing was sent to blah, blah, blah at blah, 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 and just, so on and so forth, under penalty of perjury. So do you have the court documents, like copies of the papers from these court dates? You should have copies of each order.
The only one that I have copies of is from the emergency removal order. I was told that the ones from the second court date would be uploaded into my attorney's case file, but they haven't been up there yet.
There's something that you can do, and I have shared this with many people. This is what I have done. I'm just sharing my personal experience. When I wanted a copy of what I needed to have in court, sent and on the record, I faxed in. And so emailing copies of things is not a sufficient service of process. You can't, that doesn't count. You have to do it either by a private process server. You have to do it through the sheriff's department, or you have to do personal service or facsimile. Faxes are legally binding. So I always faxed a copy to the court clerk first. So for example, if I typed up a declaration of facts and, with my attachments, did you label the exhibits?
Yes.
Okay. So I would, in my experience, I had to fax that into the court clerk first. And then, yes. So you fax it into the court clerk, and on the same day, you have to do it in the same day. If your certificate of service, which must be at the bottom of every single thing that you write, you have to get it to each party, including the clerk, on the same day that is in your certificate of service. Otherwise, you could be in trouble. So you provide that to the court clerk with a notice of filing. You can look that up on Google. You can talk to your attorney on how to do a notice of filing.
Okay.
It's a way to get your evidence onto the court record. Even if it doesn't make it into the trial itself, it is on the court record.
Yeah,
this is where lawyers disagree. Is this a sufficient way to get evidence on the record? Does this really count? So it's up for debate, but it is a way.
Yeah.
So my next piece, and this is the homework that I'm going to have for you. The next piece that I want you to do is, if you don't have a copy of these important papers, and they are so important, you should always have a copy of everything. Don't ever, anyone watching, do not ever leave that courtroom without a piece of paper in your hand with the order on it from that trial that day. You should not be leaving that courthouse without a piece of paper in your hand. And anything the judge says, during the trial, like say when somebody, has a written or spoken motion, oh, Your Honor, can we do this? Can we put this language in the order, blah, 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 or somebody brings up an objection, or, anything like that, and the judge makes a decision on whatever was brought up. Make sure that language is listed in the order. If it is not, you do have the right to stand up and say, excuse me, Your Honor, bailiff, whoever, clerk. The judge said this during the trial. I don't see it here in the order. It doesn't matter what the judge says. And this is something that I learned recently. It doesn't matter what the judge says while she's sitting on the bench during the proceedings. If it is not in that order at the end of that trial, it might as well never happen. Make sure that what is being said in that courtroom and agreed upon is in that order at the end of that trial before you leave that building. And if it's not, stand up and say something, talk to your attorney, like, make some noise.
See, my only
don't let these people push you around.
My only understanding leaving the last court was to start figuring out visitation. It was set up that we would do visitation in a public place, which I had originally asked against because I hadn't seen my kids in so long, and I was worried about, being at a playground or a place where there was going to be, distractions and stuff, because I wanted to actually have time to be with my kids. Kids are kids. They're going to want to run around and go be distracted by the things that, but I haven't seen them in so long. So we ended up at a bookstore, and I expressed that I didn't want to hold conversation, and I just kind of walked off to go have my visit, and I was called hostile for it. So
you want to hold conversation with who, your kids or the workers?
With the paternal grandmother that has my kids.
You're there to see your children.
Yeah. She walked up and tried to have a conversation with me, and all I said was, I do not have to conversate with you in order to visit with my children. And I went off to the play area with the kids, and I did my visit. And apparently considered being hostile. I was told that they would host one more visitation before court to give them a time and a date. But to be honest, I don't want to be called hostile again. I don't want more things in their files that they're using to try to use against me when I really didn't do anything wrong.
No, you didn't. And that's a very common thing that they say about, the non-offending parent who's losing their rights and being put through the ringer. Oh, she's hostile. Here she's hostile. Here she's aggressive. Here she's combative. Don't let it get to you too much. And just some personal advice. It's not what you say. It's how you say it. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to fake it till you make it. You just have to learn how to finesse these people the same way that they are trained. These people are very well trained to fuck with us and fuck with our heads. And you got to play that same game,
Yeah.
If you can't beat them, join them. Give them a taste of their own medicine, but don't make it obvious. Don't be mean nice,
The other aspect that I don't get about this, like I brought up earlier, is, the woman that took my children, her job title for 22 years was that she's a nanny. She testified under oath that she was a nanny for 22 years and now currently on disability. Well, the job title of a nanny is to take care of children. It's basic needs of taking care of a children, So that means that she proved without a shadow of a doubt that she couldn't take care of kids even part-time to start receiving money from the government. But then she took legal custody of 2 of my children. And I'm sorry, but as a mother for 17 years, being a full-time mom is like 3.5, 4 full-time jobs. If you can't part-time take care of a kid for a job, how can you do it 24 hours a day?
I feel you. I know exactly where you're coming from. And that is very interesting. And that's another thing that kind of grinds my gears that I've been witnessing since I've been thrown into the world of law, is that perjury, which is a felony, is not taken seriously.
Well, it's only taken seriously if it benefits them. If you or I commit perjury and they can use it against us, well, then great. But if they commit perjury, it doesn't matter. They can just do it some more and cover it up.
Yes. Unfortunately, that is usually the case. But, that's one of the things that I would like to fight for once I do get my bar license and become an advocate is, I want perjury to be enforced. These people, these CPS workers have qualified immunity. They're allowed to perjure themselves. I mean, there was recently a Supreme Court case about that. They were asking for full immunity to lie under oath. And the judge was like, you're joking, right? I'll have to post a link to that video. A lot of people have seen it, but for those who haven't, I'll definitely get that posted on the page. But, as long as people are not held accountable, especially these officials, for lying under oath and in these affidavits, which are also under oath, there's going to be nothing to stop them from doing it. There has to be serious consequences. If you know that you're not going to get in trouble for lying in court, what the hell is going to stop people from lying in court? And then that judge should, hopefully you're not a corrupt judge sitting in that bench, how are they supposed to know who's lying and who's telling the truth?
And see, that's what in my case made it feel, completely biased in my situation. Like, it just, you get that feeling because the CPS worker can sit there and say whatever she wants with no proof whatsoever to back it up, just words out of her mouth. And then if you do the same, the judge will be like, well, I don't feel like the CPS worker has any reason to lie. Well, you don't know me. Why would you have any reason to feel like I have a reason to lie?
Right. So for the news portion, I wanted to just really quick for you and our other viewers, read something from an article that I found about how to sue CPS. So they say it's 3 steps in this particular article. So step number 1 is seek legal counsel. Your lawyer may help in presenting evidence that will dismiss the false claims against you. The evidence may include testimonies from family members, medical professionals, school staff, and others. If you find discrepancies in the caseworker's report, you may request your lawyer to draft a legal document called Objections and Corrections to the Report of the Social Worker. Number 2, document everything and collect evidence. Build a strong case against CPS by recording their actions. However, make it clear to CPS officials that they are being recorded. Remember to ask for a written copy of all the charges against you so that you know how to prepare to defend yourself. And then finally, step 3, confront the CPS. Make sure to remain in constant touch with CPS. If CPS workers are unprofessional, you may report to their supervisors. Furthermore, your name and case will be entered into the CPS database registry when you are being investigated. When you have been found innocent, make sure to request that you have your name removed from that database. So that's more so how to prepare yourself, for court. But I thought that was, just really good advice. So the reasons for CPS to take a child, their goal is to protect the child. If a child is deemed to be at risk of significant harm, CPS can step in to remove the child from his or her home or the care of his or her parents. It is important to note that CPS does not have the authority to decide when to remove a child. If they do believe the child is at risk, CPS should seek a court order to remove the child, except the problem is this is a violation of our Fourth Amendment rights of a search and seizure. So if CPS is not in possession of a court order to remove the child, that is unlawful search and seizure. Furthermore, they often show up with these deputy officers. Deputy officers don't have the right to remove a child either. It's supposed to be a sheriff.
Yeah, they had
food for thought.
They had 4 cops at my house.
Some of the reasons that CPS will take a child into their temporary or permanent care include emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, abandonment, and incarcerated parents. Oh, and serious illness or death of parents. So the majority of cases administered by Child Protective Services involve neglect. Neglect is defined as a serious pattern of depriving a child of his or her basic physical, developmental, and emotional needs that are important for healthy growth and development. The table below outlines examples. So you've got physical neglect, medical neglect, educational neglect, emotional neglect. So how do you fight false neglect charges? Court proceedings and the final judgment must be made for a child to be permanently placed in CPS's care. For permanent placement, CPS must be able to provide evidence that the child's safety or well-being is at risk. And here in civil cases, guys, this is the key. They must prove with a preponderance of evidence, not just evidence, but admissible evidence. And a lot of these families are being railroaded in their cases by evidence that was not admissible. It was not verified. These workers are giving improper character evidence with lack of personal knowledge of these matters. It's all hearsay, calls for speculation, so long and so forth. Those are common objections that can be used. Again, not giving legal advice. I'm not a licensed attorney yet. So just keep that in mind, guys. So if you find, let me see. The evidence may include testimonies from family members, medical professionals, school staff, and others. If you find discrepancies in the caseworker's report, you may request your lawyer to draft a legal document called Objections and Corrections to the Report of the Social Worker. Okay, so we already read this part. So that was my news piece for today. Now we have less than 10 minutes left on our stream. Brittany, is there anything else that you want to tell us about your case? I just wanted to make sure that we got that news portion in today.
I really don't know. I'm so lost. I don't even know what the next step is. I just want to find out how to get my kids home, and I want to find out how to make this not so easy to happen to so many people, because I mean, there's so many people just in our area alone, like that I've already made contact with and stuff, that are going through such crazy situations, losing their kids sometimes 30 or 60 days at a time. But then CPS is staying in their life years at a time for no valid reasons. You know,
Once you're in the system, it's almost impossible to get out.
And it just doesn't make sense. And that's a lot of, on top of that, that's a lot of wasted resources on families that could actually really use, the resources in other places. And truthfully, it makes families scared. You're supposed to be there to help families, and instead most of them are afraid to come to you to even seek help or to even look for help. That's not how it's supposed to be.
Unfortunately, there's more money to be made tearing apart families rather than keeping them together. Preserving families doesn't make these people money. What do you think builds our roads, fixes our roads, builds our schools, builds our brand new, shiny, sparkly city buildings?
And pays for Florida vacation.
Money made from kidnapping and trafficking our children. That's the ugly truth. It is a very hard pill to swallow, but it is 100% true. Did you know that the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, which is the umbrella agency over all CPS in this country, do you know what their annual budget is?
It's in the billions, ain't it?
$80 billion, $80 billion a year,
And a whole lot of that goes to that Title 4E funding.
What is tell our viewers what is Title 4E?
It's basically what funds like a lot of the adoption incentive programs. It says that it's mainly to give resources to foster families and, to caseworkers and things like that. But when you actually start looking at where the funding goes, I think it was only like maybe 24% actually went towards the foster kids and the foster families. And most of it is listed as going to like case planning and managing different things. So if you really look into it, it's just
the agencies are getting all the money and all the resources.
Right.
Now, where can somebody find more information on that?
You can go right on Google. It's it's a government document. It's federal, right on one of the federal websites. You just type in Title 4E funding. It's going to have a couple of other different fundings in there that you got to actually click on those and read them to see how the percentages break down. It's almost like they word it that way, so you just think it's an umbrella of, oh, well, this is to fund foster kids.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now we're going to wrap up. But before we do, I want to ask you one last question. So being in the technology age, there is a very likely chance that your children are going to see this video. And when they watch this video, is there anything that you would want them to know? What would you want to tell them?
That I'm fighting for them every chance I can and every way I can. And I just want them home. It hurts really bad. My son's got the apraxia of speech. I told him every day of his life that he was the most beautiful boy in the world. And my daughter is definitely the best thing I never knew I needed.
Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry again that you're going through this. I understand exactly how painful this is. Is there any advice that you would give to other parents that are going through what you're going through right now?
Even if you think you don't have anything to hide, or you think that you can explain everything and it'll be okay, you should probably reach out to an attorney and get help before ever even making contact with CPS. If they contact you, get somebody that knows what they're doing to help you before you do anything, because I didn't. And
that's very good advice. They are not here to help, guys. They're not your friend. Do not ask them for help. If you need help with childcare, if you need help with food money, you go to the social services building, the one that gives out that welfare check. You go there. You do not go to CPS. They will not help you. They will use that against you.
The best advice I can get is find somebody that knows what they're doing, or at least look up what your rights are before you go ahead and.
Amen to that. Now, Brittany, are you ready for your homework assignment?
Yep.
Okay, so your homework assignment is to go to the court building in your jurisdiction. Okay, you're going to go to the clerk's office for the juvenile domestic relations court. That's what it's called in our jurisdiction. I know it's called different things in different states for the viewers who are watching. What I want you to do when you go to that clerk's office is I want you to ask them. You have to show them your ID, you know, to let them know that you're a party on this case. You want to look up the public records. You want to go to the public records room. Now, in my court building, it might be laid out differently than yours, but this is how I use it in my court building. So what you want to do is you want to get to the public records. They're in my jurisdiction, in my building, they give you a code once you prove that you're a party to the case, if you don't have a bar license. So they give you a code and you go into the computer and they will release certain files. You tell them to release all of the files on all of the court proceedings that you are a party to. So all of the court files on your children, all the court files on you, all the court files on your ex, who is also a party to the case. You have the right to see all of those files. It's public record. And you want to print out copies. You're gonna have to pay for the copies, which kind of sucks, but at least you have it. You want to print out for your own record copies of every single piece of paper on that database that has anything to do with you or your children.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. And then when you talk to an attorney, you have the entire case file, everything you need, and you need to read through it. And if you don't understand what it's saying, Google it, talk to an attorney, and consult with an attorney. Okay. So that you will understand what phase of this case you're in, like what is going on. They should have been giving you copies of all these papers. That's very disturbing that they're not.
Yeah, and again, it's very disturbing that I lost legal custody of my kids with no knowledge.
And that is why it's really important to get into that public records room, get copies of those papers so you know what really is going on. Don't take somebody's word for it. See it for yourself. And if those documents are not in, you can also, the clerk will help you also understand if you ask them what's going on, what kind of case is coming up. You're allowed to ask them questions. They can't give you legal advice, but they can give you information on your case.
Okay.
Okay. And you want to be good friends with these clerks because they have a lot more power than we realize. They have a lot of power.
Thank you for that.
Of course. Brittany, thank you so much for joining me today. And we're going to stay in touch, okay?
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Right. Now, guys, you can tune into our show, Fight CPS, The Civil Rights Struggle, every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That is 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can tune into our show here, CPS Current Events, every Monday, 1 p.m. Pacific Time, and that is 4 p.m. my time, Eastern Time. And thank you all for joining us today. I will be posting the links to the things we were talking about on our page. And if you guys would like to be a guest on any of the shows, if you need help accessing resources, please email me at amanda@vincentwdavis.com. And you can also call 888-888-6582. And thank you guys. Have a great day.